A historic breakthrough or a huge scandal. What Viktor Orban couldn't achieve in 10 years was accomplished in just 3 weeks. This is how the new leader of Hungary, Peter Magyar, described the negotiations with Ukraine. A historic agreement between Ukraine and Hungary that finally lifts all the blocks on Ukraine's accession to the European Union. Hungary announced that an agreement has been reached with Ukraine regarding the rights of the Hungarian minority, which will affect the negotiations on joining the EU. Already on June 15, Ukraine and Moldova will be able to move on to the next stage of European integration. The opening of the first negotiation cluster, which is the official start of talks on joining the EU. But importantly, what exactly did Ukraine concede to Hungary, and how is this connected to Zakarpattia? So let's discuss these complex questions together. I'm Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this episode, and leave any comment under this video. I would really appreciate it. And subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link is in the description of this video. So, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Peter Magyar, published an important message that greatly changes the context of relations between Ukraine and Hungary. According to Magyar, Kyiv and Budapest, after several weeks of negotiations, have reached a comprehensive agreement on expanding the linguistic, educational, cultural, and political rights of the Hungarian community in Zakarpattia in Ukraine. Quote, "In 3 weeks, we managed to achieve what Viktor Orban and his team couldn't accomplish in 10 years. It is reported that Ukrainian and Hungarian experts, representatives of political organizations of the Hungarian minority in Ukraine, as well as representatives of the church, took part in the negotiations. Magyar noted that the Ukrainian government agreed to introduce the agreed changes to Ukrainian legislation in the near future. According to him, this will allow the Hungarian community to gain broader rights in the fields of education, culture, language use, and political matters." Quote. Next is a quote from Magyar. "Ukraine's commitments will also be reflected in the action plan that Ukraine must fulfill before the European Union. If this happens, the government of Hungary will give its consent to open the first cluster of negotiations on Ukraine's accession." But what changes are provided for by this historic or not quite historic agreement between Ukraine and Hungary? According to Magyar, Ukraine agreed to restore the system of schools for national minorities. Why do I put restore in quotation marks? I'll explain a bit later. The Hungarian language can be used not only during lessons but also in school documentation and internal communication. Students will be allowed to freely use Hungarian symbols, perform the Hungarian anthem during ceremonies, display national flags and Hungarian language inscriptions at educational institutions. Educational certificates and diplomas can also be issued in Hungarian. In addition, graduation and entrance exams can be taken in Hungarian, and there will also be a separate exam for Hungarian language and literature. At the same time, the list of compulsory subjects taught in Ukrainian in schools for national minorities will only be expanded with the consent of parents. As Magyar stated, quote, "The Ukrainian side guaranteed that schools for national minorities will be preserved even with a smaller number of students. A separate set of agreements concerns the language rights of Hungarians. According to the Hungarian Prime Minister, in settlements where the Hungarian community makes up more than 10% of the population, the free use of Hungarian national symbols will be allowed. Hungarian can also be used when providing medical services, holding sports events, scientific conferences, and in political activities. In particular, it is planned to allow election campaigning in Hungarian. Printing of ballots and official informational materials in Hungarian. In addition, representatives of the Hungarian minority will have the right to freely preserve their traditions, celebrate national holidays, hold cultural and religious events in Hungarian, as well as establish their own cultural and educational institutions. At the same time, Magyar noted that Hungary, even after all these concessions, still does not endorse or support Ukraine's accelerated accession to the European Union. According to him, if Ukraine fulfills all 33 negotiation chapters required for EU membership, Hungary plans to hold a legally binding referendum on supporting such a decision. I'd like to remind you that earlier, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz urged the EU to open the first accession negotiation cluster soon. He emphasized that bilateral disputes between Kyiv and Budapest should not block the European integration process. On the same day, the government of Peter Magyar lifted the veto on the decision regarding the European Peace Facility, through which European Union countries receive financial compensation for the weapons transferred to Ukraine. Kyiv has called to use some of the unblocked funds to buy Patriot systems and missiles. In general, not without concessions, but a breakthrough in relations has certainly occurred. What's next? The European Commission frankly acknowledged that they are only waiting for a breakthrough on the issue of Ukraine's accession, since Hungary is ready to reconsider its position regarding the start of the negotiation process. And if this really happens, then Ukraine and Moldova will be able to move on to the next stage of European integration. This is the opening of the first negotiation cluster, which is the official start of talks on joining the EU. The corresponding decision should be made during the Intergovernmental Conference in Luxembourg on June 15. And yes, to provide some context, I should add that the system of Hungarian schools in Zakarpattia has existed historically and, attention, has never been completely abolished. But in 2017 a new education law was adopted. And so, according to Article 7 of this law, schools for national minorities, not just Hungarian but all of them, had to gradually switch to Ukrainian as the language of instruction in middle and upper grades. Education entirely in Hungarian remained guaranteed only for elementary school, meaning 1st through 4th grades. Starting from the 5th grade, the share of subjects taught in Ukrainian was supposed to increase to 70% by graduation. And to help understand how Viktor Orban still manipulated this topic, I'll add one more point. Despite this law, the much-discussed law, as of today there are still about 70 general education institutions in the region that officially operate with Hungarian as the language of instruction. And in addition, there are dozens of mixed schools where there are simply Hungarian classes. So, friends, write in the comments whether you think this is a historic breakthrough in relations with the Hungarians or a major political scandal. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially. Any donation through the links and details in the description of this video is appreciated. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone. Subtitles.